time for an update on the Climbiker spider video that you should be able to see at the top here. Maybe. It could climb amazingly. It did really well on a piece of board with a towel wrapped around it. It did really well on rocks in a quarry when I hadn't drunk too much coffee. But yeah, when I got carried away, there were a few durability problems. So let's take a look at what happened. So let's open this up and see where it all went wrong. Great. So you probably noticed a few changes if you watched the original video. I've changed to aluminium shock towers. I'm not sure. It provides a nice 5mm drop to the chassis. It could be a 10mm drop, and you have to do a little bit with the panhard rods and steering and everything else. But the downside of any chassis drop is obviously you start to hang up more, but it also changes your geometry, and that was a bit of a pain. It's got some new wheels, well, not new wheels that I found in the cupboard that I'd forgotten about and kept running the really wide SSDs, and these are a lot narrower wheels, narrower track, so gone on a bit of a diet around the hips so it stops getting wedged in simple stuff, and got the amazing Louise Roundy tyres on with the dual stage foams. I am blown away by these, and for the price of them, crazy. There should be another video popping up around here. Go watch that, find out all about these. They are brilliant. So cheeky little brass link there, that was made, but let's have a look at the underneath first. So, made a pair of brass links. They're not special, they're just threaded rod wrapped in brass with some glue to stop them from spinning, and a bit of glue in the rod ends to stop those from moving around. These rod ends have had a bit of glue just popped in the ends, so we're just making sure that they stay where they are. And you might notice that the position of these has changed, and we'll go through that soon. So these were made because the ones that I had done in the previous video where I'd changed the rod ends, I'd used quite weak rod ends and they just snapped, and I didn't realise, and I broke something on the back, fixed that, went back on the trail, couldn't work out why it wouldn't climb up anything. Certain climbs that should have been dead easy, the wheels were just spin, and nothing was happening. The suspension wasn't squatting down at the front, it wasn't staying up at the back. It was just a nightmare. So stronger links on the front, or strong enough for my use, threaded rod and a bit of brass, and making sure they're nice and tight and glued together is enough for a link on the front. You will probably break the rod end crawling first before you actually sort of bend a link that's only 70mm long. That means that we've got the same setup as the previous video, and that just means that the link is going from the front point to this higher point here, which means that these links are closer together, gives you really good actual anti-dive. The great thing about that is when you come off the brakes, lifts, but when you accelerate, it compresses. And the great thing about it compressing is when you accelerate up a slope, the front end compresses, keeps front end weight down, everything goes great. Because these wheels are a bit heavier than my previous wheels, I've actually taken a load of weight out, so there's no weight in here. These front knuckles are now back to the plastic ones, so there is no added weight to this over a normal sport other than the obvious weight of a brushless system, a direct drive servo, and the heavier beadlocks. They themselves weigh in at about 130 grams just for the beadlock. My previous wheels were about 175 on the front and about 70 on the back. So I've balanced the weight a bit more, so it's less front biased than it was previously, although as you can see, all the electronics, all the battery, everything is mounted in the front 50%. That means the truck a bit better side hilling, a bit better climbing, maybe can't quite climb the quite extreme climbs that it would have been able to do, but it will still comfortably with a shell that has been bobbed. Just sort of chopped it, shrunk it, overlapped the rear, and then hot glued it and covered it in stickers so that hopefully people are looking at how terrible the stickers are, not how bad my shell is inside. And that's brought some of the weight in as well. So yeah, minor changes to the back. So these rear links, they were terminating in the stock positions. What I've done is bought a longer bolt for these. I think it's a 35mm bolt from Amazon, and put it through and made those links attach where the upper links would normally have attached. This gives us a higher convergence point, so that when we lowered the car, and so our centre of gravity and anti-dive, anti-squat lines change, it's just making sure that the convergence point of those top links, which is in the other video here, is above that line and giving us the effect that we want. This is where I had an issue. And then a week later, after I'd fixed all of this and redone all the plastic welds and everything else, this is where I had an issue. So when I'd done the temporary version of this, I'd put on these link mounts, put 2 screws down, bolted it on, took it out, rolled it up loads of hills, and it turns out that the little bit of flex that it had was stopping it from breaking off. When I plastic welded it on the first time, I didn't penetrate the weld enough, and I didn't test the weld. And the way to test it is to basically pick it up and drop it on its side, and then have a look, make sure nothing's broken, and then pick it up a bit higher and drop it on its side, and rinse and repeat until you're confident dropping the truck from at least about eye level to the floor on its side, because that's what I end up doing on the trail. Yeah. A lower centre of gravity as well, I've found, helps that when you fall, you tend to barrel roll, and barrel rolling means that you've got this rolling motion. So when you hit the ground, the moment of impact is increased because you're rolling, and that helps reduce how much you smash up your trucks. Or you could probably not drive like me and be sensible. But if you don't want to be sensible, carry on watching this video. So I also had the problem where I'd attached the battery tray to where I'd done this, and it looks like terrible plastic welding. I just got fed up after an hour or two of doing it, and just left it rather than filed it down and finished it like I would if someone asked me to do it for them. So what I've done is move the battery tray, which you can probably see here, used to attach onto this bit, and instead just put 2 screws through it and just screwed it to the top of the transmission, so that any force from the battery tray is being applied to the transmission, not being applied to where I'm attaching these links. What this means is when I crash, not if I crash, when I crash, you don't have the 200 grams of the battery trying to eject itself off the crawler, also pulling on something that's got the links being forced into it. I've also taken a piece of aluminium rod, and hopefully anyone with any kind of machining skills will sort of put their fingers in the air for the next 10 seconds, essentially cut it to the right length to fit between here, then these screws go through and screw into it, and I didn't tap the threads, I just forced the screws in, and when they stopped screwing in, backed them off a little bit, shook it, carried on. And essentially the stainless steel screws will tap into this quite easily, and what that does is share the load. So when a link tries to push and shear this piece off, it's also transmitting across to this piece. And to help with that, I've put in another piece of bracing, which is just a cut up side tray, made sure it had a piece of the sort of ribbing on it to make sure it was nice and stiff, and basically just put 2 braces across here. So that's about it. It still climbs amazingly well. You can, if you want to make it almost comp crawler, barely dragger kind of climbing, start adding weight low down, add weight to the wheels if you want to. Don't recommend it because you blow up the gearbox if you play around with your brushless system. So try and add weight in here. So brass knuckles, brass portal covers, brass C-hubs, maybe steel for these pieces, maybe change these links for brass, but try and add the weight to the axle or the hubs. You can get differential covers as well that's made of brass, or you could just chuck in some fishing weights into one of these diff things, which is something that I've only just thought about. I might look into that, because these, a set of these covers that run all the way down, they're dead cheap from Amazon, and rather than buying loads of brass, I could just get some wheel weights, fishing weights, and just put them on the inside, and I'm pretty sure you could get a good 50 to 70 grams in there, which would then give you a nice low weight, pulling the axles down. That's going to be good. Yeah, the suspension, just a little standoff, aluminium shock towers. Took it down. The stock one would be the sort of middle bottom one there, taking them up 5mm and back 5mm. People talk about alpha angle and laying down your shocks to get these magical properties. All it does is change the progressiveness of your shock. It doesn't change how it actually works, and in fact alpha angle is a way of working out spring rates at a given angle. When you lay down the shock, you change that, so then you have to compensate the spring rate by applying more spring rate, because the more you lay them down and back, the softer the spring gets. And also as the wheel changes, as the bottom point moves, that angle continues to change, and actually what you end up with is a slightly odd situation where as you go deeper into the shock, the spring rate decreases. So what I find when you lay them down too much but then try to have a sprung setup is that you just blow through the travel really quickly to the point that you bottom out, and then as soon as you bang on the bump stop, you're off. If you're running droop, and this is probably why so many of those setups are droop, it's actually the opposite, and I think it's more ideal for those kind of setups, because again, it helps you get back to that droop faster, and the higher away you get, the stiffer the spring rate, so there's less chance of dropping into the droop quickly. So you tend to find that they sort of settle quite progressively, so they start off slow and speed up as the spring rate gets lighter. And that's quite nice. That means that you can climb over something and sort of have that slow quick, and off you go. Nice fluid movement. But I'm a big fan of sprung. I've set my truck up with lots of anti-squat to keep the back up and the front down. and that's how I like to drive. It means that I can attack hills, because the more speed I've got, the more of those properties I get, the more acceleration. So I can sort of blast up, blast up, blast up, and every time I blast, it will force the nose down, force the nose down, force the nose down. The people who run droop and belly draggers and everything else, they seem to want to crawl, 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 and then occasionally when they get stuck, then they use the wheel speed. I like that, I can do that, but I'm impatient, so I just tend to go rah. Cool. If you've made it this far, thanks for listening to my rants and rabbles. Probably a lot of information in there. Hopefully you enjoyed some of it. Hopefully it helped out. If you have any questions, ask in the comments below. Please like and subscribe and help me out. That's awesome. Thank you.